The morning sky was like any other, stretching endlessly in shades of blue, the sun casting its warm, golden rays over Earth. The world stirred into action, workers bustling to their jobs, children heading to school, and the hum of life continuing as it always had. But all of that was about to end. It started as a strange phenomenon, one that went unnoticed for the first few minutes. The sun dimmed, just a fraction. Most thought it was a fluke, maybe a passing eclipse, but the darkness deepened. A strange, cold shadow spread across the Earth, as if the light was being slowly pulled away by some unseen force. People glanced upward, wondering if the world was about to witness the most unique cosmic event of the century. Instead, they were staring at the end of their world. Astronomers scrambled to find an explanation. A team at the Mauna Kea Observatory in Hawaii was the first to pinpoint the anomaly. Through their telescopes, they saw it, a massive, moving black mass, slowly engulfing the sun itself. It was alive, its shape shifting and rippling like a living creature, a dark, chaotic form that devoured the sun's rays. The team's instruments went wild as they detected an intense gravitational disturbance. Earth's orbit was beginning to wobble. The sun was dying, and something had come to consume it. The Nyx Dominion, that was what the researchers called it, after deciphering fragments of the ancient signal that came from the depths of space. The Dominion had wiped out entire star systems before, leaving nothing but husks of planets and extinguished suns. They were the galaxy's apex predators, creatures of dark energy, capable of absorbing entire stars and siphoning the life from them. Fear spread like wildfire. Panic swept through every major city. Governments tried to quell the growing hysteria, but the truth was undeniable. Earth had been marked for extinction. The media broadcasted live feeds of the ever-growing darkness creeping across the sky. Once bright, the sun now looked like a dying ember, barely hanging on to the last threads of its existence. In a matter of hours, temperatures plummeted, and cities plunged into chaos. Crops withered, communication networks faltered, and global economies collapsed. The only thing more terrifying than the dimming sun was the chilling realization that Earth was no longer in control of its fate. Something ancient, far beyond their understanding, had arrived. And it wasn't just coming for the sun, it was coming for everything. At the United Nations Emergency Summit, world leaders convened in the first ever Global War Council. They debated, argued, and fought over who should take command of Earth's last defense. But the situation was already beyond their control. There were no military powers strong enough, no weapons advanced enough to challenge a cosmic predator. All they had was human ingenuity, their last remaining weapon. The truth was, Earth was already on the brink of collapse, and humanity's only hope lay in one fact: the Nyx Dominion was not invincible. In their desperation, the global coalition turned to a new, untested plan, one that would require human willpower and sacrifice. It was then that a signal broke through the static, its message clear and chilling. You are not the first, you will not be the last, but if you wish to survive, you must fight back with everything you have. The stars will bow to you, or you will fall. The fight for Earth was no longer just a struggle for survival. Humanity would have to defy the darkness, and in doing so, prove they were more than just a fleeting species. The sun was dying, but in the hearts of humanity, a spark was beginning to grow, a defiance against cosmic annihilation. As the last remnants of global society scrambled to adapt, a clandestine gathering took place beneath the surface of the Earth. In the deep, reinforced bunkers of what had once been the world's most secure research facility, the last hope for humanity was beginning to take form. The Global War Council was assembled in a cavernous chamber, a room illuminated only by flickering holoscreens and dim emergency lights. The world's most brilliant minds, military commanders, rogue AI, and the remnants of every major scientific and technological advancement were now working toward one goal: survival. No one was a stranger here. Every country, every faction, had one common purpose: stopped the Nyx Dominion before it consumed everything. At the center of the gathering stood General Marcus Kane, a battle-hardened veteran of countless conflicts. Despite the panic seeping into his bones, his eyes were sharp, calculating. His voice, though grave, resonated with the authority of a man who knew how to make decisions in the face of annihilation. "The situation is worse than we could have imagined," Kane said, his voice amplified through the speakers. "The Nyx Dominion is consuming our sun at a rate faster than any of our simulations predicted. We're running out of time. And soon, the entire solar system will fall under their control." Beside him, Dr. Celine Carter, the leading astrophysicist and one of the architects of Earth's last defense plan, stepped forward. Her normally calm demeanor was shaken. The realization that the planet was on the precipice of extinction loomed over them all, but Carter had come to a chilling conclusion. Humanity could no longer wait for the sun to be restored. It was time to fight. "We can't just survive," she said, her voice steady but fierce. "We have to counterattack, take the fight to them. I've been working with my team on a theoretical weapon, a stellar lance capable of reigniting a dying star. It needs two things: a hypercharged energy core and a delivery system powerful enough to pierce the Nyx Dominion's fortress. We have both." The screen behind her flickered, displaying images of the Soul Lance, a colossal, unfinished weapon designed to unleash an unparalleled surge of energy. But there was a catch. The core needed to power it, a rare alien energy source, was located in the heart of Jupiter. The massive gas giant had been a distant, uncharted realm of mystery, but now it was humanity's final hope. Dr. Carter continued, "We've located an ancient alien civilization's energy core deep within Jupiter's atmosphere. It's volatile, dangerous, but it's the only fuel powerful enough to charge the Soul Lance." She paused. "The problem is, it's in the most hostile environment we could imagine, and to retrieve it, we need a team willing to risk everything." The council chamber fell silent. The weight of their predicament was becoming too clear to ignore. A cosmic entity, one that had wiped out countless worlds, was at their doorstep. The entire planet was at risk. General Kane clenched his jaw. "We're not going to send a handful of volunteers. We'll need a full-scale operation. A fleet, ground forces, everything we have left. If we fail, the entire human race is finished." For a moment, it felt like they were staring at the abyss. The odds of success seemed impossibly slim. But then, as the tension mounted, a voice spoke up from the back of the room, a voice neither soft nor hesitant, but filled with a cold certainty. "Then let's send everything we have." It was Captain Sarah Vance, a former deep space commander known for her audacity and relentless spirit. She was infamous for taking the most impossible missions and turning them into victories. Her crew had followed her to the edge of every battlefield, and now they would follow her to the heart of Jupiter's storm-ridden core. The council agreed. The decision was made. A fleet of modified warships, their hulls reinforced with scavenged tech, would be launched from Earth's orbit. The mission was clear: retrieve the core from Jupiter, bring it back to Earth, and use it to power the Soul Lance, the weapon that would pierce the heart of the Nyx Dominion. But there was more than just technology at stake. The human spirit was the most valuable asset in this war, more powerful than any weapon, stronger than the most advanced AI. If humanity was to stand a chance, they would need every last ounce of courage, every scrap of hope. They had no choice. The war had already begun, and humanity's final stand had started with a decision. The clock was ticking. The launch of humanity's last hope was nothing short of a spectacle. The skies above Earth, once a serene blue, were now a chaotic expanse of warships, energy shields, and emergency beacons. The fleet, consisting of 20 ships, ranging from massive dreadnoughts to agile fighter vessels, was a desperate hodgepodge of technology, hastily upgraded for one purpose: to reach Jupiter and retrieve the alien core buried deep within its storm-ravaged depths. The ISS Resolute, a converted space battleship, was at the head of the fleet, carrying the heart of the mission, the Soul Lance. Captain Sarah Vance stood on the command bridge of the Resolute, her hands gripping the console as the countdown began. Around her, the faces of her crew reflected the same blend of determination and dread. There was no turning back. If they failed, Earth would fall. No one would survive. "Captain, we've established launch clearance," the communications officer reported, breaking the tension in the air. "Good," Vance replied, her voice unwavering. "Let's move out." With a synchronized roar of engines, the fleet shot into space, the stars streaking past them as they made their way toward the gas giant that had become the epicenter of Earth's last hope. But their journey would not be unchallenged. The Nyx Dominion had already set its sights on the fleet. Without warning, a massive shadow appeared on the radar, a swarm of Void Striders, the biomechanical predators that served as the Dominion's shock troops. These creatures were twisted abominations, part machine, part nightmare, capable of distorting reality around them. Their grotesque forms twisted in space, black limbs extending like the tentacles of some alien leviathan, as they surged forward to intercept. "Enemy vessels incoming. Brace for impact," shouted the fleet's tactical officer. "Stay tight," Captain Vance barked. "Defensive maneuvers, all ships. Protect the Resolute." The first strike came fast and hard. A Void Strider-class destroyer surged toward the Resolute, its hull shimmering with dark energy. Energy blasts streaked through space, and the fleet's shields flared to life, absorbing the brunt of the attack. The Resolute's heavy guns fired in return, but the Void Striders were no easy target. They moved with unnatural agility, darting between incoming fire like shadows, their weapons tearing through the fleet's weaker ships with brutal precision. "Target the Striders' propulsion systems," Vance ordered, watching the chaos unfold on her screen. "Disrupt their movement." The battle was pure carnage. Earth's warships fired back, launching everything from plasma torpedoes to experimental antimatter warheads, but the Void Striders absorbed most of it with their dark energy shields, turning the very fabric of space into a battlefield of explosive light and writhing shadows. It was a fight unlike any the human race had ever faced, a struggle between flesh, steel, and the incomprehensible darkness of the universe. The Resolute's hull shuddered as an explosion rocked the ship. The bridge lights flickered briefly before stabilizing. Vance's teeth gritted. She wasn't just leading the fleet, she was commanding the last stand for her species. "Status report, engineering," she called out. "Shields at 60%, came the grim response from the engineer. "We've sustained damage to the port side." The Void Strider's energy pulse shorted out several circuits. "Damn it, we can't afford to lose the momentum," Vance muttered under her breath. "We're almost at Jupiter. Push through." Meanwhile, on the smaller scout ships, the pilots engaged in a deadly game of cat and mouse with the Void Striders. Vance watched as one of the smaller ships, the Vanguard, was torn apart by a direct hit from a Strider's energy blast. The ship's debris tumbled toward the gas giant, a grim reminder of the cost of failure. But they had no choice but to press on. Jupiter's storm clouds loomed closer, swirling, turbulent, and deadly. The mission team had no time to waste. They needed the core, and they needed it now. "Prepare to make the jump into Jupiter's atmosphere," Vance ordered. "We're entering hostile territory. Expect heavy interference." The fleet moved with precision, drawing closer to Jupiter's maelstrom. The Void Striders, unable to follow their prey into the storm's depths, peeled away, leaving behind a field of wreckage and broken bodies in their wake. The human fleet, battered but resolute, plunged into Jupiter's storm-ridden atmosphere, knowing that the hardest part of their mission was yet to come. Inside the storm, there would be no hiding. They would either retrieve the core or be consumed by the gas giant's crushing depths. The countdown had begun, and for humanity, there was no turning back. Jupiter's atmosphere was an endless abyss of swirling clouds, where lightning crackled like the fury of 1,000 storms. The warships in the fleet entered the upper layers of the gas giant, their sensors flickering as they encountered violent electromagnetic interference. The temperature plunged even further, and gravity distorted in places, tugging at the ships in unpredictable ways. This was no longer space. The ship's hulls groaned under the pressure of the vast, crushing weight of Jupiter's gaseous envelope. Captain Sarah Vance's hands tightened on the console, her eyes scanning the chaos outside. She could feel the tremors of their descent, a constant reminder that they were not just in a storm. They were in the storm, a chaotic vortex capable of destroying anything that dared enter. "Steady," Vance muttered to herself, although she could feel the unease in her crew. The uncertainty of their environment weighed heavily on everyone. Still, they had no time for fear. The energy core was down there, somewhere amidst the storm, and they would not leave without it. The ISS Resolute plunged deeper into the atmosphere, its engines straining against the relentless winds and turbulence. Outside, the viewports showed nothing but roiling, gaseous chaos. The larger ships in the fleet struggled to maintain their course, buffeted by Jupiter's fierce weather patterns. "Captain, we're losing contact with the fleet," reported Lieutenant Simon Hayes, the communications officer. "The storm is interfering with long-range signals. We're on our own down here." "Understood. We can't afford to lose our way," Vance replied, glancing toward the flight deck. "Keep scanning for any signs of the core's energy signature." But as they descended deeper, a new disturbance emerged from the storm, a series of violent ripples in the dense atmosphere, followed by a massive pulse of energy. The ship's systems went haywire, and the Resolute's hull groaned as something enormous brushed against them. "Captain, something's out there," shouted Lieutenant Hayes, his voice edged with panic. Before Vance could react, the storm itself seemed to split open, revealing the form of a massive, serpentine creature, its body twisting through the gas giant's clouds. A leviathan. The creature was colossal, its scales shimmering with dark energy as if made of the very fabric of the storm itself. Its massive tentacles, each one longer than a warship, lashed out, cracking the atmosphere and tearing through the clouds. The crew of the Resolute watched in stunned silence as the Leviathan's massive eyes glowed with an otherworldly intelligence. It was no ordinary creature. It was a predator, a guardian of Jupiter's core, drawn to the energy signature of the fleet's approach. The Nyx Dominion had set this abomination to guard the prize humanity sought, an ancient weapon of unfathomable power. "Brace for impact," Vance barked, but it was too late. One of the Leviathan's colossal tentacles slammed into the Resolute's hull, sending the ship careening through the storm. Crew members were thrown from their seats as the ship spun out of control. "Damage report," Vance demanded, regaining control of the helm as alarms blared around her. "We've lost several external thrusters," the engineer reported, his voice strained. "Hull integrity compromised. We're going down." The Leviathan, sensing its prey, lunged again, its massive form blocking the Resolute's path. With terrifying speed, the creature wrapped its tendrils around the ship, squeezing with the force of a planet's gravity. The crew felt the oppressive pressure of the Leviathan's grip, an alien force that defied reason. "Shields at 40%, Captain," cried Lieutenant Hayes as the ship creaked under the strain. "Release the secondary thrusters," Vance ordered, her voice tight with concentration. "We need to break free." In the midst of the chaos, the rest of the fleet had taken evasive maneuvers, engaging the Leviathan with every weapon they had, but it was clear, this creature was no ordinary guardian. It was a sentient nightmare, capable of manipulating the very storm that surrounded it. As the Resolute's shields flared and began to fail, Vance realized the truth. The fleet couldn't fight this beast in open space. They needed to make it to the core now, or the Leviathan would shatter them before they even reached their goal. "Prepare for close-range maneuvers," Vance said, her voice now calm, as if the storm outside was no match for the storm within her. "Deploy the boarding team. We're going to make a run for it." The decision was made. The crew would board smaller, agile craft to navigate the Leviathan's grip, and the elite extraction team would fight their way to the core, no matter the cost. The battle for the core had only just begun, and this Leviathan was just the beginning. The storm outside raged with terrifying intensity as Captain Vance's decision to board smaller craft thrust her crew into the heart of the Leviathan's terror. The larger Resolute was no longer able to fight or even maneuver against the beast's overwhelming force, its shields flickering dangerously. With their path forward blocked, the only choice was to cut through, to strike directly at the source of the storm, the energy core of Jupiter. The boarding team, a hand-picked crew of the most experienced soldiers and engineers, moved swiftly. They were clad in advanced exosuits, designed to withstand the crushing pressures and volatile environments of Jupiter's inner atmosphere. Each member of the team knew what was at stake. If they failed, humanity's last hope would be lost forever. Vance stood on the edge of the hangar, watching as her team prepped for launch. A heavy weight hung in her chest, but she forced it down. There was no room for hesitation. She had never let her emotions control her, and now was no different. "Deploy immediately," Vance commanded, her voice sharp, though inwardly her heart raced. Her officers and soldiers, Lieutenant Hayes, Dr. Carter, Sergeant Montero, and a dozen others, piled into the boarding shuttles. Their mission, to board the Leviathan, reach the creature's core, and sever the connection it had to Jupiter's energy field. The shuttles burst from the hangar, streaking through the dense, lightning-laced atmosphere. The Resolute's shields held just long enough to provide a brief moment of respite before the monstrous creature retaliated. Tentacles shot forward like enormous living blades, and a deafening crash sounded through the hull. The boarding team could feel the ship shudder as they accelerated into the storm, the gravitational pull of Jupiter and the Leviathan dragging them into a chaotic maelstrom. "We're cutting it close," Lieutenant Hayes muttered into his comm unit as the shuttle dove deeper into the planet's churning depths. "The Leviathan's about to tear through us." Vance's voice crackled through the comms. "Stay focused, everyone. Get to the core. We don't have time for anything else." The shuttle's hull groaned as it maneuvered between the Leviathan's writhing limbs, dodging bursts of energy from its energy tentacles. One of the other shuttles took a direct hit, its exterior exploding in a flash of incandescent light as it was torn apart. The rest of the team pushed forward through the cloud of debris, adrenaline coursing through their veins. As they approached the heart of the storm, the Leviathan's terrible presence loomed large. They could see it now, a monstrous mass, a being of sheer, mind-bending scale. Its enormous, glowing eyes burned with cold, malicious intelligence as it turned toward them. The creature's body pulsed with dark energy, and every part of the storm seemed to respond to its presence. "We've reached the energy core's proximity," Dr. Carter called out. "Prepare to deploy the grappling system. We need to secure a foothold before the creature attacks again." The shuttles hovered just beyond the edge of the Leviathan's reach. It was close. So close that the energy signature of the core seemed to hum with power, both ancient and unsettling. The team activated their gravity boots and exosuit anchors, anchoring themselves to the volatile surface of the massive creature, despite its constant shifting and thrashing. But the Leviathan was not content to simply defend its territory. With a massive roar, the creature lunged forward, its gigantic tentacles reaching out to rip the ships apart. One of the shuttles was hit again, its fuel lines rupturing and sending it spiraling into the storm below. "Brace for impact," shouted Sergeant Montero, as the remaining shuttle surged forward, weaving between the Leviathan's tendrils, the lightning arcing through the clouds, making the scene even more nightmarish. They had no choice but to continue. Time was running out, and the energy core lay just beyond the reach of the Leviathan. If they didn't act now, the entire fleet, and all of humanity, would be consumed by the storm. Vance, in her shuttle, made the final decision. "We're going in. Fire all thrusters. Push through." With a surge of power, the remaining shuttles charged forward, breaking through the Leviathan's defenses. Tentacles lashed out again, but they were too quick. The boarding team reached the heart of the storm and the ancient energy core beneath the Leviathan, ready to take the final step in a mission that would determine the fate of the human race. But as they prepared to make the final move, the creature's eyes flared brighter. Something deeper was at work. The storm began to intensify, the core's energy shifting. It was not just protecting Jupiter, it was awakening. The team now realized they weren't just fighting for a weapon. They were fighting to survive an ancient cosmic force that had been waiting for humanity's arrival. The energy core, buried deep within the Leviathan's twisting, organic body, pulsed like the heartbeat of an ancient, unfathomable power. As the boarding team anchored themselves to its surface, the atmosphere around them began to shift, growing even more oppressive. The storm, once just a chaotic force of nature, was reacting to their presence. It wasn't just protecting the core, it was feeding from it. "Captain, we've reached the core's location." Dr. Carter's voice came through the comms, her voice strained. "But something's wrong. The core's energy is fluctuating. It's not stable." Vance's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean? Is it too late?" "I don't know yet," Carter replied. "But it's like the core's been activated by our presence. The storm is getting stronger. The Leviathan is beginning to converge on our position." Vance cursed under her breath. They had to act now or everything they had fought for would be lost. The Leviathan wasn't just a guard. It was the womb of a cosmic force, and the energy it contained had been waiting for something like humanity to awaken it. "Get to work, Carter. We don't have time to analyze. Start the extraction process," Vance ordered, gripping the controls as her shuttle trembled with the shockwaves of the storm outside. But as Carter began the delicate procedure to interface with the core, the ground beneath them shifted violently, and the storm grew in intensity. Lightning flashes grew more frequent, and the air crackled with energy so intense it felt as if the very fabric of space-time was being distorted. "We're losing stability," Carter shouted. "It's reacting to the energy we're trying to pull. The Leviathan is." Before she could finish, the storm erupted in a blinding flash of energy, an implosion of pure force that sent shockwaves through the Leviathan's body. Vance barely managed to hold on to her controls as the ship was thrown off course, spiraling through the atmosphere like a ragdoll. "Everyone, brace for impact," Sergeant Montero shouted. But the team was already in freefall, tumbling toward the center of the storm. Vance fought to steady her ship, locking eyes with her crew. There was no more time for doubt. They needed that core, now, no matter the cost. "Activate the final extraction protocol," Vance ordered. "We're going straight through." The crew reacted immediately. Montero and the other soldiers began opening the ship's secondary hatch, preparing to board the Leviathan's body. They would have to climb through the massive beast, cutting through its thick, pulsating flesh, to reach the core itself. As the hatch opened, Vance felt the pressure building in her chest, the air growing thicker, heavier. They were in the heart of the storm, surrounded by a creature that had lived for millennia, guarding a power greater than any weapon humanity had ever known. "Get in there, now," Vance urged, slamming her fist on the console. She had no intention of losing her team or humanity's chance at survival. Outside, the Leviathan's enormous body twisted in response, its tentacles flailing in all directions. One of them lashed out, striking one of the other shuttles in midair. The explosion was deafening as the shuttle disintegrated into 1,000 pieces, the force of the blast ripping apart the very clouds around them. The remaining boarding shuttles could barely hold their position against the might of the creature's wrath. "Move out," Vance shouted. The team scrambled into position, pulling themselves from their ships and jumping from one surface to another. The Leviathan's hide was tough, but not impervious. Each step was a fight, every movement a test of their strength and resolve. They crawled up the beast's massive body, cutting through layers of alien muscle and organic armor as the storm howled around them, making every motion a struggle. They had to get to the core before it was too late. But as they neared the center of the creature's body, an eerie guttural sound echoed through the atmosphere. The Leviathan was waking up, truly waking up. Its immense energy began to resonate, vibrating through the entire storm system. The core's energy surged, and time itself seemed to warp around them. The air shimmered with pure, raw power. "We're almost there," Dr. Carter said through the comm, her voice strained, as if struggling against the weight of the energy that now filled the very space between them. "I can barely keep my grip. This power, it's ancient. It's not meant for us." "We don't have a choice," Vance said. "Do it now. Start the extraction, Carter." But before they could make the final push, the Leviathan gave one last shriek, a sound so loud it seemed to resonate across the entire planet. The core's energy surged outward, and in that moment, everything changed. The storm exploded into a massive shockwave, and the Leviathan's body started to fold in on itself, a deep cosmic awakening that could either save or doom them all. The shockwave from the Leviathan's awakening slammed into the team, throwing them from their positions. The air was alive with energy, crackling with power beyond comprehension, warping space and time around them. The storm that had once been chaotic and violent was now alive, pulsing with the resonance of the core. The Leviathan itself seemed to vibrate with the force, its massive form quaking as if it were at the center of a storm of cosmic proportions. "Hold on," Captain Vance shouted, trying to regain her footing. Her exosuit's thrusters flared as she pushed herself back toward the core. The air was thick, suffocating, but she could feel the hum of the energy now. It was undeniable. Dr. Carter was the first to speak, her voice strained but clear through the comms. "The energy, it's not just for power. It's alive. Vance, it's sentient." The realization hit like a bolt of lightning. This wasn't just an ancient energy source. It was a living force, an entity capable of controlling not just the storm, but the very fabric of the planet's core. Jupiter itself was its prison. The team was making their way through the pulsating landscape of the Leviathan's insides, fighting against its writhing tissue and the enormous pressure pushing from all sides. The farther they moved, the more difficult it became to maintain their bearings. The atmosphere distorted around them, twisting their perceptions of space. "We need to extract the core now, or we'll be trapped in here," Vance ordered, her voice strained as the storm's energies surged around them. "Carter, start the sequence." But Carter, who had been working tirelessly on her console, hesitated. "It's not enough. The storm is reacting to the core, and it's beginning to merge with it. This isn't just a matter of pulling the plug. It's like we're interfering with its consciousness. It's resisting us." The storm itself began to grow sentient in its own right, and the Leviathan's body responded like a massive beast awakening from slumber. Tendrils of energy wrapped around the team's suits, pulling them inward. The storm began to tighten like the grip of a monstrous hand, and the space around them warped, creating impossible bends in reality. One moment they were standing on solid ground, and the next, they were in the air, weightless, floating toward the storm's epicenter. "We can't let it reclaim control," Sergeant Montero growled, his eyes wild with desperation. "If we don't sever its connection to the core, it will tear everything apart." "Montero, hold on," Vance shouted, her voice rising above the chaos. "We must get to the core. We're running out of time." The team pushed forward, cutting through the pulsating tissue of the Leviathan, heading toward the center. Every step was a battle. The storm surged with greater intensity, nearly pulling them apart with its violent energy. And then it happened. The ground beneath them shuddered violently, and a massive ripple of energy pulsed outward from the Leviathan's core. It was as if the creature's very being was imploding in on itself, folding inward like the collapse of a dying star. The team was thrown backward, crashing into the jagged walls of the Leviathan's cavernous innards. "Get up. We need to finish this," Vance yelled, scrambling to her feet as the shockwaves of energy spread outward, tearing at their suits. Carter's voice crackled through the comms, her words thick with panic. "It's trying to reclaim its power. The energy is merging with the storm. We won't be able to extract it in time if we don't act now. Vance's mind raced. The storm wasn't just a protector anymore. It was a sentient, cosmic entity, one that was fusing with Jupiter's core, potentially merging its consciousness with the planet itself. If they didn't stop it, the Leviathan and the core would become one with the storm. And that would spell the end for not just Jupiter, but the entire galaxy. We need to sever its connection to the core. Now, Vance said, her voice low but determined. She knew the stakes. She knew the price. And she wasn't going to let the human race pay it. Montero, Carter, and the rest of the team moved quickly, struggling against the increasingly hostile environment. The core was nearly within reach, but the energy surrounding it was growing uncontrollable. As Carter reached for the final access port to extract the core, the Leviathan's body convulsed violently, and a final pulse of energy erupted, sending a shockwave through the entire storm. Vance knew it was now or never. They had to sever the Leviathan's grip on the core before the entire storm consumed them all. This is it, Vance said, her voice tight with resolve. Finish the extraction. Now. The storm, now fully awakened and thrumming with unfathomable power, continued to roar like a living entity, clawing at the very fabric of reality. The core pulsed, a heartbeat that reverberated through the Leviathan's body and the storm surrounding it. Every second felt like an eternity, as if the universe itself were holding its breath. If they failed now, everything would be lost, not just the mission, but the future of humanity. Carter, hurry. Vance's voice was hoarse, strained with the urgency of the moment. The storm raged around them, lightning dancing through the air like jagged spears. The Leviathan's body twitched as though it was aware, trying to resist the team's attempts to sever its connection to the energy core. Carter's hands flew over her console, sweat trickling down her face as she tried to override the final sequence. I'm almost there, Vance. But the energies, it's too much. It's like the core is trying to bond with me. I can feel it, as if it's trying to communicate. Vance took a step toward her, gritting her teeth against the oppressive forces surrounding them. No time for communication, Carter. We're this close. Finish it. Carter hesitated for only a moment longer before her eyes hardened with resolve. Understood. She activated the final sequence, sending a pulse of electrical energy into the core. The entire cavernous chamber trembled, and the air crackled as if the Leviathan itself was screaming in agony. The storm intensified, a blinding wave of energy ripping through the atmosphere. Then, the world exploded. Vance's suit was suddenly slammed to the ground, and everything went dark. For a moment, there was nothing but silence, absolute and eerie. Then came the distant sound of crackling energy as the storm continued to swirl above, though now there was a shift. It felt wrong. The surge of energy that had once been unbearable now felt faint, like the ebb of a receding tide. Vance's suit systems blinked back to life, and the HUD display came back online, showing the devastated interior of the Leviathan. The team was battered and scattered, but they were alive. The storm outside, though still intense, was no longer the chaotic beast it had been. The dark, oppressive weight that had been pressing down on them had lifted. Report, Vance growled, her voice strained but steady as she took in the damage to her surroundings. We did it, Captain, Dr. Carter replied, her voice hoarse but triumphant. The connections severed. The cores no longer fused with the Leviathan or the storm. We've neutralized it. But as the team regrouped, something else became apparent. The Leviathan was dying. The massive creature's body, once pulsating with life and energy, was now going still. Its massive form convulsed one last time, and then its entire body began to decay, the organic matter breaking down, its structure unraveling. The storm outside was losing its power, no longer feeding on the core's energy, and with it the Leviathan began to disintegrate into nothingness. The core, still glowing faintly, was now dormant, its power extinguished, its energy no longer a force of cosmic will. But the storm that had enveloped Jupiter had not fully dissipated. The remnants of the creature's final thrashings hung in the air, the echo of its death still vibrating in the atmosphere. "We're not out of this yet," Sergeant Montero said grimly, staring out at the fading remnants of the storm. Vance nodded, her jaw clenched. "We need to get out of here now. The rest of the fleet is waiting for us." But as the team turned to make their retreat, something unexpected happened. From the center of the Leviathan's body, a faint shimmer of energy began to rise. It was as if the very essence of the storm, what remained of the core's power, was gathering itself, coalescing into a singular point. The team froze as they realized what was happening. "No, it can't be," Carter whispered, her voice barely audible. The core was regenerating, drawing on the last remnants of the storm's power. It was trying to reawaken, trying to regain control of Jupiter. Vance's instincts kicked in. There was only one choice left. "We have to destroy it. Now," she ordered. The team immediately sprang into action, but they knew time was running out. The core, though diminished, was still a force capable of wiping out everything they had fought for. Vance knew what had to be done. She pulled out the final detonation device, one that would overload the core's energy and send it into a catastrophic implosion. "This is it," Vance said, looking at her team. They had come so far, and now they would either win or die together. With a final push of energy, Vance activated the detonation sequence, and the core exploded in a burst of light so intense it blinded them all. The storm vanished, the Leviathan was no more, and Jupiter, for the first time in millennia, was silent. The battle had been won, but at what cost? As the team made their way back to the remaining fleet, they knew that the universe had been forever changed, and humanity, against all odds, had survived.